Hello everyone, I am Dr. Urvija Sharma, a fellow under Dr. My patient Mrs. XYZ, a 22-year-old primigravida of spontaneous conception in a non-consanguineous marriage with no significant personal, family or medical history, with previous NT and TIFA scan reports done but not available, was referred to us for a second opinion at 30 weeks of gestation in view of bilateral ventriculomegaly and enlarged posterior. On ultrasound, in the transventricular view of the head, the shape of the CSP was seen to be abnormal. There was mild colpocephaly, that is the posterior horn and the atria of the lateral ventricle was more enlarged as compared to its anterior horn and measured around 11.2 millimeters. The midline falx was clearly visible. The parieto-occipital sulcus was clearly. On the transcerebellar view, the cisterna magna was enlarged to about 16 millimeters. The cerebellum appeared normal in shape. The fourth ventricle was closed. You could see the abnormally shaped CSP flanked by the anterior horns of the lateral ventricles. The Sylvian fissure or the lateral fissure was clearly seen. The head parameters, that is the bipyramidal diameter, the head circumference and the cerebellum were all. Now, in the mid-sagittal section, the corpus callosum was found to be partially absent, that is, its posterior part of the body and the splenium was not clearly seen. At 30 weeks of gestation, this is how the normal corpus callosum should look like. The splenium usually overhangs the quadrigeminal plate of the midbrain, which cannot be seen in my case. This is the proper mid-sagittal section. As you can clearly see, a highly echogenic kidney-shaped vermis, which was in this case normal in shape, size and position and was unrotated. It was almost parallel to the brainstem. The cisterna magna appeared to be enlarged. Now on Doppler in the mid-sagittal section, the pericallosal artery was seen only in the anterior part, confirming the absence of the posterior part of the body and the. A thorough examination of cardiac, skeletal and genitourinary system was carried out, which revealed no additional abnormality. The femur length and the abdominal circumference were less than 5th centile and the estimated fetal weight was 1.1 centile, but since there were no previous reports to compare with, we could not stamp this as a case of fetal growth restriction. The Doppler study was within normal limits. Now coming to the diagnosis, a diagnosis of partial agenesis of corpus callosum with megacisterna magna was made. The patient was counseled regarding its guarded prognosis and amniocentesis for chromosomal microarray was done, where advised for need of whole exome sequencing if needed. Fetal MRI for confirmation of the diagnosis and further evaluation was asked. Unfortunately, the patient. We received this chromosomal microarray report as abnormal. There was microdeletion on chromosome 10, which was termed as likely pathogenic because this deletion has previously been reported with neurodevelopmental delay in de novo state and hence has been classified as likely pathogenic. Now coming to the discussion, corpus callosum is the largest commissure connecting the two cerebral hemispheres. The segments of the corpus callosum rostrocaudally are the rostrum, the genu, the body of the corpus callosum and the splenium, which overhangs the quadrigeminal plate of the mid. Now coming to the embryology, at 6 to 8 weeks you see the developing telencephalon with the underlying lamina terminalis. This further forms the lamina reunions, which forms the area septalis. In the area septalis develops the massa commissuralis, where the commissural plate develops, which around 11 to 12 weeks gives rise to corpus callosum and the septum pellucidum. This gets completed by 18 to 20 weeks. Traditionally, it was thought to start in the region of the genu and then progress posteriorly, forming the body and the splenium, and the rostrum was thought to be the last part to develop. But according to recent studies, the anterior part of the body of the corpus callosum is the first to develop, followed by bidirectional development. The rostrum develops slightly before. Now coming to cavum septum pellucidum, the septum pellucidum is a two-layered membrane between the anterior horns of the lateral ventricles. The two layers are separated by a fluid and hence the name cavum septum pellucidum. Since the CSP and the corpus callosum are intimately related to each other both in anatomy and embryology, the CSP is usually abnormal in cases of corpus. This is the cavum septum pellucidum as seen on the lateral view. continuing into the cavum vergi. Below lies the third ventricle, which continues into the fourth ventricle connected by the aqueduct. And this is as it is seen on the anterior view, flanked by the anterior horns of the lateral ventricle. Now, the ISCOG has given certain guidelines for the evaluation of corpus callosum on ultrasound. The ideal gestational age is around 20 weeks. Then, when the fetus is cephalic, transvaginal approach is preferred, and when it is breech or transverse, the transabdominal approach is preferred. The acoustic windows through which we view the corpus callosum are the metopic suture, the anterior fontanelle, and the sagittal suture. When you use the metopic suture and the anterior fontanelle to view the corpus callosum, the anterior part is more clearly visualized, and when the sagittal suture is used, the posterior part of the corpus callosum is more clearly visualized. There are two approaches to view the corpus callosum, the fetal profile approach and the coronal approach. In the fetal profile approach, when you obtain the profile approach by side-to-side lateral movements of the probe, you get the exact mid-sagittal plane demonstrating the corpus callosum. In case of coronal section, you have to get the coronal section in which the CSP is vertically placed flanked by the anterior horns of the lateral ventricles, and then rotate the transducer by 90 degrees, hence obtaining the mid-sagittal plane and viewing the corpus callosum. The pericallosal artery can be viewed by color Doppler in the mid-sagittal view. Now, coming to the nomenclature of the corpus callosal abnormalities, they are complete agenesis of corpus callosum, partial agenesis where there are missing segments, usually the splenium or the rostrum is absent. In corpus callosal hypoplasia, the entire length is present but is uniformly thin. In dysplastic corpus callosum, the entire length may be thickened, or there is focal thickening or abnormal contour of the corpus callosum is seen. Associated abnormalities may be lipoma, interhemispheric cyst, etc. Destructive lesions of the corpus callosum are infections or. Now, coming to our case, that is the partial agenesis of corpus callosum, there are various indirect and direct signs seen on ultrasound which point us towards the diagnosis of agenesis of corpus callosum. On axial section, you see a short CSP. The CSP is usually rectangular in shape with its length being more than its width. But in case of partial agenesis, its length shortens, leading to the short CSP, and its length is to width ratio becomes less than. This demonstrates the intimate relationship between the CSP and corpus callosum in various conditions, like in complete agenesis, CSP and CC both are absent. In septal agenesis, though the CSP is absent, the corpus callosum is completely normal. In partial agenesis, the corpus callosum is partially absent and the CSP is abnormal. This is a study which demonstrates the CSP length is to width ratio as a marker for partial agenesis of corpus callosum, according to which the length is to width ratio less than 0.5 is a marker for. Now, the second indirect sign is colpocephaly, which is usually subtle. Then associated conditions will be lysencephaly, polymicrogyria, heterotropias, interhemispheric cyst, midline lipomas, or dandruff. Now, coming to the direct signs, which are usually seen on the mid-sagittal section, the length of the corpus callosum is lesser than 5th centile or 2 standard deviation. In absence of the splenium and the posterior part of the body, the splenium does not overhang the quadrigeminal plate of. ISCOG has given gestational age-related normograms. This is how you measure the corpus callosum from end to end, and then you can compare it with the age-related normogram which is present, and then you can call it as normal or short. The cingulate gyrus is also seen, and it runs parallel to only the extent of the corpus callosum. Medial hemispheric sulci are radially arranged in the regions of the corpus callosum where it is absent. The pericallosal artery sweep is present only over the segment of the corpus callosum where it is present. Now, association with other malformations, it is high both in case of CNS and extra CNS malformations. CNS malformations like Dandy-Walker, gyral anomalies, neuronal heterotopia may be seen, and extra CNS abnormalities like congenital heart disease, skeletal and genitourinary deficiency. Now, this is the association of chromosomal and non-chromosomal syndromes. Chromosomal syndromes like 13, 18, deletions and microduplications can be seen. And when you type partial agenesis or complete agenesis of corpus callosum on omium.com, you can see around 26,000 entries. These are some of the common syndromes like acrocallosal syndrome, achardia syndrome, Apert syndrome, crash syndrome, tuberous sclerosis, etc. In this, there are some salient points related to each of the syndromes. Like in acrocallosal syndrome, the agenesis of corpus callosum is associated with eye abnormalities like microphthalmia. Then you can see post-axial polydactyly, the clefting of lip, palate, etc. In achardia syndrome, the agenesis of corpus callosum is associated with the midline lipoma and the sex of the fetus will be female. In case of crash syndrome, the agenesis of corpus callosum is associated with the male fetus, and there is hydrocephaly, and the thumbs of the fetus as seen on ultrasound are adducted. Now coming to the management, the chromosomal microarray is the investigation of choice, and whole exome sequencing is also to be advised considering the high risk of non-chromosomal syndrome association. Accurate familial analysis and careful search for additional structural anomalies should be done. A tissue sample should usually be preserved for a possible molecular diagnosis. Fetal MRI for diagnosing associated cerebral anomalies like late sulcation, migration anomalies, and heterotropy. This is a study which demonstrates the prenatal MRI to be a valuable complementary technique for either diagnosis of corpus callosum agenesis and depiction of associated neurologic. This was a study which showed fetal MRI based scoring system for prognostication of complete agenesis or partial agenesis of corpus callosum. In this study, it was shown that these of the following parameters were taken and the scoring was given as 0, 1 or 2. It was seen that less than or equal to score of 3 showed good outcome and more than or equal to 4. Now whenever you see a complete agenesis of corpus callosum case or the case of partial agenesis of corpus callosum, you have to first rule out any associated intracranial, extracranial abnormalities. For this you have to do a TIFA scan, a complete neurosonogram with fetal MRI. Invasive testing should also be done with chromosomal microarray and whole exome if possible, and always DNA storage should at least be done. If all of this turns out to be negative, you stamp this as a case of isolated, complete or partial agenesis of corpus callosum. 15% cases of isolated lesions postnatally had other anomalies. For partial agenesis, always infection. Now coming to the prognosis and quality of life, the CNS malformations, especially the gyral anomalies or the extra CNS malformations, can be present even when corpus callosum agenesis is apparently isolated on ultrasound or MRI, especially if the evaluation is carried out at or after 22 weeks. This is because many of the abnormalities like lissencephaly develop very much later. Now, significant neurodevelopmental delay develops in 20 to 30% of cases, even if agenesis was confirmed to be postnatally isolated. Now, subtle neuropsychologic, perceptual, and motor defects can emerge later in life. A protracted follow-up until around 6 years of age is important to update the neurodevelopmental status. Recurrence risk is 5% when all syndromes. Now, this was a study, isolated agenesis of corpus callosum and normal general intelligence development during postnatal life. This showed the neurocognitive features of disrupted interhemispheric connectivity in patients with corpus callosotomy and isolated agenesis of corpus callosum. In this, when the genu and the rostrum were absent, the incoordination of both hand movements, slow sensory and motor reaction times was seen. And similarly, when the splenium was absent, there was poor comprehension of sarcasm, limited interpretation of second order meanings. Now, this was another study which showed the clinical outcome of children with corpus callosum agenesis. Normal neurodevelopmental outcome was seen in 76% cases of agenesis of corpus callosum. Moderate disability was seen in 16% cases of complete agenesis and 15% cases of isolated partial agenesis. It was interesting to see that severe disability was slightly more in cases of isolated partial agenesis as compared to complete agenesis of. Now coming to the next part of the topic, like in our case you saw an enlarged posterior fossa. Whenever you see such a condition, now these are the following conditions which can be considered as the differential diagnosis. First is the Dandy-Walker malformation, then is the isolated Vermean hypoplasia, Blake's pouch cyst, megacystana magna, posterior fossa arachnoid cyst, and the lesser. Now megacystana magna will be discussed in detail later. Now the Blake's pouch cyst, in this condition the vermis is normal in shape, size and position. It is slightly rotated from the brainstem. The fourth ventricle is open into the cisterna magna, which is usually normal in size. Now coming to the Vermean hypoplasia, the vermis is smaller and hypoplastic in size. It is highly rotated from the brainstem, but it is less than 45 degrees. The open fourth ventricle forms a narrow V with the enlarged cisterna magna. In Dandy-Walker malformation, the vermis is hypoplastic and dysplastic. It forms an angle of more than 45 degrees with the brainstem. The tentorium is also elevated. The fourth ventricle forms a wide U or a wide V shape with the enlarged cisterna magna. Now coming to megacystana magna, it is cisterna magna larger than 10 millimeters. It is formed when Blake's pouch expands to a size more than normal, increasing the size of. Now on ultrasound on axial transcerebellar view, the cisterna magna is thought to be enlarged more than 10 millimeters. It is diagnosed only after 18 weeks, as this is the time when the vermis completely develops. The open fourth ventricle is not seen. On mid-sagittal view, the vermis is normal in shape, size and position. It is unrotated, and the megacystana magna is usually an isolated. Its association with other anomalies like supratentorial anomalies has been seen. The risk of chromosomal and non-chromosomal syndromes is high if associated. Now coming to the management, chromosomal microarray is mandatory, especially in cases associated with other anomalies because of the risk of chromosomal anomalies. A thorough anatomic scan should be performed by an expert because of the high risk of association with other CNS and extra CNS malformations. Postnatal therapy is not required, and the prognosis in absence of other associated abnormalities. Thank you.